What's up, everybody? Welcome to GoJo Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., Jesse Cofield, hanging out with you guys here on a Thursday. We are brought to you by Wrangler, made for the ride of life. Save 15% on your first Wrangler.com order with promo code GOJO15. Got a great show for everybody coming up here. We have got recently retired Pro Bowl tight end Kyle Rudolph joining the show, also happened to be my former roommate and teammate at Notre Dame, as well as the Hall of Famer Warren Moon going to stop by as well. As Dan, we're getting set for Thursday Night Football. We are back in the flow of things now. I feel like we had the Christmas Day kid in a candy store feel last week going into week one, and now, guys, we've had that realization that, oh, we get to do this again a lot more times before it's all said and done, and that's freaking awesome.
It's so nice. Game night already again. I mean, it's awesome. Also, the reality of the NFL set in with the injury list that we'll talk about as well. I mean, again, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when you get hurt and how bad you get hurt, as injuries will affect the games again. But you're right. We're now in the flow until, February 11th, I think, is the Super Bowl. And we all enjoy it until February 12th, when we all have a day of mourning that we have to wait months and months for football to start up again. But we are right in the beginning and prime time to enjoy.
Yeah, prime time indeed. And we'll get into plenty of what's coming up in the game tonight with the Eagles and the Vikings. A lot of really exciting angles on that one. We'll also talk a little bit more on the injury front. You mentioned we have finally heard from Aaron Rodgers, the Jets star quarterback, who unfortunately suffered that Achilles rupture on Monday Night Football. But, Dad, I feel like we've spent so much time talking, understandably, about that team in New York, right? We had the Jets and what they were able to do, still coming back and winning that game in a division game to start the season. We had what happened with the New York Giants on Sunday Night Football as this big draw because it was a big, loud, ass-kicking score, and we all wondered what the hell was wrong there. I don't know if we've spent enough time, at least us, I've seen it discussed some elsewhere, on the third team in New York, as Jet fans of this team would point out, the only team that's technically in New York, in the Buffalo Bills and Josh Allen, and what happened Monday night to that team, Dad. As we know, Josh Allen turned the ball over four times during that game, has led the league in turnovers since he got into the league. All these stats that are now pretty commonplace heading into week two. I guess the question is, are you actually concerned? Have we reached a point now where Josh Allen, who finished third in the AP Player of the Year or AP MVP voting last year, and has been perennially one of the best quarterbacks statistically in the last few years, as well as anecdotally, are we actually worried just because of what we saw in this primetime game?
Well, I mean, until he gets them over the top, you're going to say they're one of the better teams, but we know what the goal is. The goal is the Super Bowl. Hell, I was in the era where Jim Kelly quarterbacking a team that went to 4 straight Super Bowls and lost. By the way, something I would take any day of the week to go to the Super Bowl, even if I lose. They're right there. You wonder, when are they going to start running out of time? 2019, you're a wild card at 10-6. You lose at Houston in the wild card. 2020 to 22, you win the division 13-3, 11-6, 13-3. But you lose to KC in the AFC Championship. You lose to KC in the divisional round. You lose to Cincinnati in the divisional round. So his style and this team gets you so far. And back in the day, it got Marty Schottenheimer fired from the Cleveland Browns for making the AFC Championship a couple of times and going through the fumble and the drive with, the Broncos. And you eventually, look at Andy Reid. 5 NFC Championship games, 1 Super Bowl appearance and a loss, and you get ousted from Philly. So it only lasts for so long of how long that window is open. Between, again, 19 and 22 years, he was really playing full. 128 touchdowns, 48 interceptions, but he makes bad decisions. He admits he makes bad decisions. He said it's kind of like a double-edged sword. I have to learn, though, when to take the risk. And when he said that, who I immediately thought of, and I hope both of you have seen this movie, Ben Stiller in Along Came Polly. I mean, he was a risk assessment manager. That's what Ben Stiller did. Now, Josh Allen has to do that in a matter of 2 seconds, right? He has got to be Ben Stiller in a quick form on the field to make better decisions, when to throw the ball, because the turnovers come at not only does he turn the ball over a lot, they come at horrific times as well. So I just read to you where he finishes and where the team finishes. So he's good enough to get you there. But eventually, if you have those turnovers at the wrong time in the playoffs, you're gone. And he has, unfortunately, kind of the ability, or has been doing that. And that costs his team. So I don't know how long their window stays open. But I'll say this. It's tough for me to tell him to change. They tried that a bit in his second year. They said, listen, you got to run a little less. He can't. He's got to be him. He's got to run. Lamar Jackson's got to run. Jalen Hurts has to run. If these guys are going to win, they can't change who they are. But what he can change, and he even admits it, is some of those decisions.
Yeah, I think the running thing is less, hey, we don't want you to run all the time, and more, we want you to be a lot smarter about when you do it. There's just times on Monday night even, he's taking unnecessary hits at the end of run. He's not sliding at easy spots or would be advantageous for him there, or hurdling in weird spots. Like, we know he's going to run, and especially as a scrambler, that's a huge asset. But he's just, for a player who's now been in the league as long as he is, he still really doesn't seem to take shots off himself. And also, I think a lot of it's the decision-making downfield, too. It's that belief that you can put the ball anywhere,
right,
anytime, any place. I'm trying to get myself back in football because all I want to talk about is Philip Seymour Hoffman's role in Along Came Polly, which is one of my favorite ever.
Awesome.
This crocodile wrestling, volcano luging son of a is going to die or not? And the answer is no. That's more, he is much more like the boss that they are trying to ensure that Philip Seymour Hoffman has to give the presentation on than he is Ben Stiller, who very clearly is risk averse in that movie. But Dad, to your point of them trying to coach him back, I think, and we shouldn't present it like a binary, right? Where obviously Josh Allen, part of what's made him great in the recent number of years is by being willing to put the ball in difficult places. He creates a lot of plays for you. Again, I said he finished third in MVP voting last year, third in passing success rate via Pro Football Reference, second in QBR, 10th in sack percentage. Like, he does a lot of good stuff for you in the course of this offense, that the thought is sometimes, well, do you just have to take the bad with the good because the good's been so overwhelmingly there for this Bills team? But I think the problem becomes, Dad, relative to who he's compared to. If it was just Josh Allen versus the other, passing eligible quarterbacks in this league, you're going to take him every time. Like, he's still, I'd imagine for most people, a top 5 quarterback in the NFL based on what he can add to you. But the problem is he's not compared to the rest of the quarterbacks in the NFL. He's compared to Patrick Mahomes. He's compared to Joe Burrow. He's compared to Jalen Hurts and Lamar Jackson and the rest of the quarterbacks at the top of the league. And when that's the group that you're in, and when now, like you said, the expectation's been, hey, we're a perennial playoff team, we're supposed to be a contender, and we got to get over the hump, it is going to be in critical moments. Can he corral enough of himself at this point to give them an opportunity to win the game when it doesn't have to be a shootout, when it doesn't have to be a back-and-forth bomb fest?
Yeah, listen, and as we talked about this last week, I think the other teams so now we talk about timing, their window of opportunity. And while Kansas City is still up there, and I think Cincinnati is, even though they're coming off week 1 losses, I think maybe the rest of that AFC is catching the Bills, unless people think Cincinnati is going to falter. I still think Cincinnati is going to be fine. They've had the bugaboo against the Browns, as I mentioned. Burrow's 1-5 against them. I still put KC and Cincinnati there, and then it was always Buffalo in that top 3. But I do believe overall anyway, other teams are catching Buffalo. Now, maybe not the Jets after losing Aaron Rodgers, but certainly that defense in New England we've been talking about. Miami, I think, could be past Buffalo. Time will tell on that one. But other teams in the AFC as well. We know the Chargers can score a lot of points as well. So I not only look at Josh Allen, but I look at this team, and as far as their window of opportunity in a very deep AFC, that they're going to get caught from behind sooner than Kansas City and Cincinnati are going to get caught from behind.
Well, I think with Kansas City and Cincinnati, a lot of that's because they've already had to shift once, right? We've seen the exodus of players out of there. We've seen free agents leave to sign big contracts elsewhere. Outside of, I think it was Tremaine Edmonds who signed with the Steelers the Bears this offseason for a big money deal. the rest of that group has started to age. We've talked about Micah Hyde, the secondary guys that were banged up a bunch last year. You've had your homegrown young guys on the D-line, but then you brought in Von Miller, who's on the older side of things. Tre'Davious White, all these names that have been around for a while, they haven't had to make that shift, Dad. And that's going to be more on Brandon Beane in the front office for how they weather that, because we know once you sign the star quarterback, you have to start going to work in the draft. You have to find ways to work in the margins. But I think we're more curious about them because they're still in a lot of people's senses on the first real iteration of this team, right? The Stephon Diggs era, where, oh, by the way, Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs become just the second Bills wide receiver duo, quarterback and receiver duo to reach 30 regular season touchdowns, joining Jim Kelly and Andre Reed. So they've been able to do a lot together, but we haven't been able to see them weather the storm there. And so I think that's why we probably think about them a little differently than the Chiefs and the Bengals.
Yeah, it's about when do you have to, there's having to make changes around your team, but when do you have to start to make changes at the core? We know the core for Mahomes and Kelsey. Tyreek Hill was there, but he's gone, and they've managed around that, and they have to do that. You know, when Kelsey got hurt, they have a ton of receivers. Juju Smith-Schuster's gone as well. So again, they're kind of reshaping. For Cincinnati, they've got studs there, and they've had studs there. You know, with Higgins and Chase and Burrow, I mean, you're set there. It's just that old line has been a real issue for you, getting Burrow killed back there and then tinkering with your defense. But yeah, how long can you hang on to your core guys? And when the ancillary guys change, which happens every year for every team, what kind of changes do you make? Do you bring in guys that still have a few years left? Do you bring in the gunslingers, the Von Millers of the world to come in for a year or two and try and give you that boost? All depends on how you want to build, because that then is going to tell you how you're going to build after that.
Yeah, and I think for teams that have a Josh Allen at quarterback, you get to build with perennial contention in mind. That's sort of how you've got to operate with these dudes because of the luxury you have at that position. The other part of this, not just change around the team. And listen, there are things as a team Buffalo has to address around Josh Allen. This is the most dependent position in football. The offensive line gave up way too many pressures, although accounting for opponent. You can say, well, there's not many teams that are going to match what the New York bleeping Jets are doing on defense. And so that's certainly one you can look at. But in that division, you know, Miami's got pass rushers. New England, we saw, certainly had dudes that popped up. Keon White in week 1. Good God, what a pick that looks like for the New England Patriots. And so that's going to be an issue. It's always been the conversation around Gabe Davis as the second wide receiver in that room. Is he as good as we saw in one playoff run? And then there's the more existential question. And Jesse, I think this is an interesting point that I saw made yesterday. Brooke Pryor is a great writer over at ESPN. Did a piece talking about the trend that we're seeing league-wide right now surrounding the deep pass and its role in the NFL at the moment.
Yeah, we took a look at this article yesterday, and it was basically saying, is the deep ball dead here? So there were 3,416 attempts of at least 15 yards downfield during the 2022 regular season, the fewest in any season since 2006. So the question is this evolution of the game? Is this because of the way defenses are playing? And then you look at these numbers and you're like, are Josh Allen and the Bills the ones trying to keep the deep ball alive here?
Yeah, Dad, this is I think the more overarching thing. We talked about how much the running game made a reappearance last year in the NFL, the RPO game that's been so sexy, especially with young quarterbacks in the league. And God, I mean, till it's blue in the face, everyone talking about shell coverage. It's two deep safeties, but everyone throwing them back there and trying to make sure that you can't go out there and Tyreek kill people to death anymore. Dad, you wonder if this is the other next step for Josh Allen, is he's got to get more comfortable doing the more mundane parts of the job.
Well, didn't we go through this with Patrick Mahomes?
Yeah.
When all of a sudden they started playing back on him, but he still was trying to force the deep balls and wasn't looking good early. And he even said, his quote was, we faced so many deep coverages where teams were taking all our deep throws. I had to learn when to just take what's underneath. And it took him a little bit to learn that, especially when you have success with the deep ball, that all of a sudden you have to back off and you almost feel like you're failing if you say, damn it, I got to go underneath here, when in essence, that's the way it's got to go now. This is all cyclical things in the NFL. I was playing at a time, and it all depends on when. Fritz Shurmur, God rest his soul, one of the great defensive coordinators of all time, when he was coaching in the NFC, he saw other NFC teams getting bigger wide receivers, i.e. the Randy Mosses of the world, like in Minnesota, and said, okay, we're going to look through our personnel players and the decisions and get bigger cornerbacks, get guys who can rough it up. Now, this is back when they let you get away with a little more and work, if you were touching a guy at 6 yards, they throw a flag. So you did what you had to do to battle against that. We see it now with more spread offenses, right? So that's one of the reasons the running back position has been undervalued. Now you have lighter D ends, you have a lighter defense, you have lighter linebackers, so they can be in coverage a little more. That's really how any sport works. You adapt. I mean, you see it all the way down into Little League, into high school, spread formations in the offense. That dictates now what you do on defense. So, and then when you react on defense, now how do you react on offense? That's why when we say it's a chess game, we're serious. It's a chess game. What's the other side? This is what we want to do. The other side is doing this. We can't do one of the things we want to do. So what do you do instead? You look at Tyreek Hill. We talk about him as one of the best deep ball guys in the league, which he is. He's the best deep ball receiver in the league. But also when you see his yards per catch being at 14 or 15, sometimes that's a slant. Sometimes that's an in with a good throw, and he's yards after the catch. Look at San Francisco for the last couple of years. They have led, Christian McCaffrey has led, and the team has led in yards after the catch. Kyle Shanahan's offense. Get the damn ball out into one of our stars and let them make the yards, because that's what the defense is giving us right now. So it's the old adapt or die, right? Where they're trying to take this away. Don't keep trying to force it. Pick your shots and take what the defense is giving you. And then when they start playing up, you go over the top. I mean, this has been going on forever in the NFL, just in different aspects of it.
Yeah, I do think it's funny. You go all the way back to the big corner idea, and we've watched that go through multiple cycles, right? We remember the early, the mid-aught Seahawks, and we talked about this talk at the live show in Kansas City, where you saw the Legion of Boom guys get huge on the perimeter to try and rough up receivers. You're seeing now, especially in this most recent draft class, a ton of slot-type bodies coming into the offense and wide receivers to get smaller to counteract that stuff. Like, all of this is going to keep moving. Change is the only constant here.
Mike, there was talk about safeties, how that position is so important now, because that person's like a safety, like a linebacker, and comes up and plays on the line as well. Well, there were times the safety was more a coverage safety. There was a player when I was playing, he played in Cincinnati, David Fulcher, was like a 245-pound safety. Safety. I mean, remember Brian Urlacher was a safety at New Mexico State and then came in and played linebacker. You had Ray Lewis, you had monster linebackers, you had bigger safeties, and then it goes through a change. But you're right, then it can cycle back. So that's where we are with the deep ball right now. And will it cycle back at some point? We'll see. But right now, it's, hey, take the stuff underneath and pick your shots over the top.
And we saw a couple of Josh Allen's interceptions were attempts to go deep in places that maybe were not advisable at that moment in time. And like you said, you're fighting human nature in a lot of this.
Yes,
you talk to anybody around these quarterbacks, former quarterbacks, they're like, yeah, you're a competitor. You want to throw the ball deep. It's cool. It's fun. Everybody oohs and ahs.
And one of the things also you see nowadays a lot is, see it in college too, but in the NFL, is crossing routes underneath, right? So you're trying to do the natural, and I do air quotes, picks on defenders to get a guy freed up. The key now in the NFL, get a guy to catch the ball in space 10 yards or closer to the line of scrimmage and let him do his thing.
Yeah, you've got to be willing to be patient and be risk averse at times. And for a group of guys who came into the NFL with their biggest strength being, hey, you can cut it loose better, faster, and longer than anybody else, that's a big time change being made. Big time change also is the amount of athlete podcast voice that we have out there. We heard from one of the biggest ones yesterday, and we'll get to that next here on GoJo and Golic.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. I'm Jesse Cofield, and the boys are beefing. Okay, so let me make sure I get all of this straight. So Cowboys coming up with a huge win over the Giants, and former Giant Kadarius Toney not letting his own poor performance stop him from ripping his former team. He went on Instagram, and he was getting a little saucy on there, and he was not the only one who had something to say about how this game went down.
When the Bengals pulled Joe Burrow in the fourth quarter, is that benching? No, it is not benching, okay? You got your franchise quarterback who just got paid, who came off a calf injury in camp, so barely really got to work with his guys. The chemistry and timing could be off. So, guys, be realistic. Is Joe Burrow bad? No, he just had a bad day off night. He wasn't able to build that relationship back with his guys. And, it tended to cost him. It's not benching. It's called protecting your guy. Something I thought the Giants should have done. I don't think Daniel Jones should have been in that game in the fourth quarter. I thought they should have protected him and pulled him out. And barring injury, their season will be over without Daniel Jones. The Bengals did the smart decision by pulling Joe Burrow, saying, hey, we're going to submit. We're going to take our loss, and we're going to move on the next week and get better. That's the best thing you can do. I do not agree with Daniel Jones staying out there into that last drive. I thought that was wrong. I thought it was deceiving. That's your franchise quarterback, and he's out there with the backup offensive line still getting sacked and hit. I just didn't understand. Maybe it was a prove-it moment by the Giants. I have no idea. A learning lesson. Who knows? But I thought Daniel Jones should have got pulled out. So it technically is not benching.
Yeah, okay, so with Parsons leading the charge, they did sack Daniel Jones 7 times. So he's not wrong. But did he say that was deceiving?
Yeah, I think that might have just been one of those moments where you're in the middle of a monologue and you need a word, and it sounds like the word, but it ain't the word. And listen, that's the gift and curse of doing a solo podcast, which, by the way, The Edge with Micah Parsons, getting these takes off, Dad. My favorite part about this, though, is that his take is, you needed to save him from me. I was out there and you needed to get him away from me because me and all of my friends were doing bad things to him.
First, I'm not going to lie. I love the current athlete having their own, vessel to the outside, to the fans, to the outside world in these podcasts for 2 reasons. One, as I said, we talked about, Mike, when we got into this business and we go to call games, my thought is always take people down onto the field or in the locker room or in the mind of an athlete where 99.9% of them have never been on a professional level, and take them on the inside. Well, now you have athletes doing podcasts, current athletes who are doing that all the time, which is just awesome. And the second part of it is the possibility of beefs, which is always going to happen because, one current athlete say one bad thing about another current athlete, and we got a great beef to talk about. So that's always fun as well. He he might as well, I called this game for Westwood One, and he might as well have been in the booth with me talking about this. And quite honestly, he could have been, because they didn't need him on the field anymore.
Yeah.
I was screaming about it. I wasn't actually screaming, but saying this almost the entire fourth quarter. Why are you keeping Daniel Jones in the game? And Brian Daboll was asked about it, and he said after the game, we just wanted to get something kind of positive going. Get something positive going. It's 33-0, 40-0. It's rainy. It's wet. Your quarterback's getting hit every play. Who the hell cares about anything positive at the end of that game against backups for Dallas? I was stunned at this decision. And what did it almost cost him? Sam Williams comes off the edge late in the game. I think that the last series that Daniel Jones was in there, he's clearly offside, but there was no whistle for unabated to the quarterback to stop the play. He saw Daniel Jones in half on that play and got the 5-yarder, which who cares? But that could have been the play where Daniel Jones got hurt. I cannot believe they left him in that long, and I completely agree with Micah Parsons. I'm sure it's how good is it when you're on the other team and you're on the sidelines, and I'm sure Micah was even saying, why the hell is this guy still in the game? Your game's going pretty well when you can say that about the other team's quarterback.
Right, exactly. You're so secure in victory that you have time to empathize on an NFL football field. That's a different level of ass whooping right there. Yeah. But you're right, Dad, and I kind of liken it to in the preseason. A lot of times we hear coaches come into a game and they want X amount of snaps for their starters in the game. And sometimes if you got a sloppy drive, maybe you turn it over or you don't execute quite well, they'll leave them out there another drive or two because they want to end on a make, for lack of a better term. Right. That idea in general, I don't have a problem with, but in a vacuum, right? Ignoring the circumstance here where you already had one of your starting tackles get hurt. Your backup swing tackle got hurt in that game. You're working behind backups like Micah mentioned. And also, it wasn't just a game where you were performing badly. Your quarterback was getting destroyed the entire time. Yeah. With all of that as the backdrop, that is what makes this decision so befuddling. I get you're probably frustrated in that moment. We saw that manifest with Brian Daboll. There was a 4th down and 3 in their own territory when they're down about 30 in that game. Yeah. And he just waves a hand out there like, we're going. You could tell he was ticked off, and he's a fiery guy, but that can't then manifest in the way that you manage the most important asset in your team right now.
I just was amazed at that and just holding my breath every time he got hit because – and I get what you're saying in that preseason game. If you're supposed to say an X amount, you want to end on a high note. What would you consider ending on a high note here? You're playing against backups. What do you hit a long pass and say, all right, then you go into film on Monday and you say, okay, look at this last play. Let's build off this. Are you kidding me? I mean, you just got your asses thoroughly whooped. If you would have scored, and oh, by the way, you didn't, it would have been against a lot of backups on Dallas. So I was completely befuddled there. They certainly have, quote unquote, an easier opponent this week in Arizona, even though Arizona put on a nice battle last week. So we'll see.
Yeah, Jesse, let's look ahead to this weekend for both of these teams. Is this prime bounce back territory or prime upset territory?
Well, I mean, we're talking about going up against the team who's likely to have the #1 pick in the draft. So you got to think that this is a bounce back spot and they can finally get something going.
Yeah, so the Cardinals are hosting the Giants. The Giants are 5.5-point road favorites in this game. And, Dad, as someone who had Washington in a survivor pool last week and got to sweat out that Cardinals experience here, them and the Bucs don't appear ready to go quietly into this good night. I think a lot of that could have to do with the fact that, hey, listen, what we talked about for Josh Dobbs coming over and now getting inserted into that lineup pretty quickly for the Arizona Cardinals, while he's been around the league, you really didn't have a ton to scout on him going into week 1 with that particular team, new coaching staff, all the different nuances that might lead to it being difficult to wrap your arms about what a team's going to do. So maybe you could say that's the case as well for the Giants walking into this week, but this feels like one where, yeah, the injuries up front in the offensive line are a bit concerning if Andrew Thomas can't go with that hamstring, but this should be prime bounce back territory for these Giants.
You know, there's no way the Cardinals have the pass rushing attack that the Cowboys have. But the Cardinals did have 6 sacks against Washington. So they were putting some pressure on the quarterback. Let's see about the health of that offensive line for the Giants, but they need to get the running game going as well. I do see a victory for them. There's no way, maybe they weren't as good as we thought last year, but they're certainly not 40-0 to the Cowboys bad. They're somewhere in the middle, hopefully more toward the upper side of that, but we're going to find out. They're clearly one of those. This is week 1. We saw with Kansas City why you had a couple of people out. Cincinnati has had a tough time with Cleveland, but the Giants, let's see. We have time now to let's see what you were closer to starting in Arizona this week.
And on the other side for the Cowboys and podcasting, Micah Parsons, they're hosting the Jets. They're 9.5-point favorites. And we're so concerned about the Jets offense, what we saw last week, the safety of them going up against this Dallas defense that is a full-blown weapon. Dan, I'd like to just put both defenses out on the field at once and let them fight each other, because the Dallas offense didn't look great and didn't really have to do much. Well, I think save the final score for them for when they're actually tested in a game where the defense and special teams aren't scoring left and right. But this can be a wild one to watch both these defenses cook.
I can't wait. I know people love offense. This is going to be a defense. What is the over-under on this? I'm taking the under.
Yeah, no, hammer the under on that one and let it ride there. Coming up next, though, let's look ahead to the game coming up tonight next on GoJo and Golic.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. I'm Jesse Cofield, and it is Thursday. You know what that means. Prime. Thursday night football on Prime. It is on, baby. Vikings visiting the Eagles. Should be a good one. Vikings coming off that loss to the Bucks. A little bit surprising, but that's what week 1 is all about. Am I right, baby? Looking to bounce back. But they do have the defending NFC champs in their way tonight. So Eagles coming off a very close one to the Patriots. We thought they might be looking a little rusty, after a relatively slow preseason, but they're looking to get in their groove, start clicking on all cylinders here. So let's break it down, fellas. Eagles have the advantage in this one, right?
Yeah, Eagles definitely have the advantage in this
Yeah.
one. They're 6.5-point favorites in this game. But, Dad, as with most Thursday night football games in week one, or sorry, week two, coming off week one, is no exception. This can be all about who's available. And there are a lot of injuries that are going to make the matchups in this game even more important to pay attention to. On the Minnesota Vikings side, you're likely going to be down Garrett Bradbury, your starting center, who's dealing with back injury coming off week one, in the middle of that offensive line. And then how about this for the Eagles? I saw this courtesy of Ben Solak over at the Ringer.
Yeah.
Through last season, through 20 total games, the most offensive and defensive starters that the Eagles had unavailable in a single game was 3. This week with Nakobe Dean out, James Bradbury out, Kenneth Gainwell out, and Reed Blankenship all unlikely to go on Thursday Night Football. They have already cleared that number in week 2. And, Dad, at some important spots. We talked about this with Mina yesterday. The middle of the field for that Philly defense got tested. The linebacker level got thrown at a lot. And now you're going to be down one of your best guys at that spot in week 2.
Yeah, listen, we talked about Nakobe Dean already. He's on the short-term IR, so that's 4 weeks he's gone. You mentioned the safety, so right up the gut again. You look at the defense up the gut, where they're still pretty solid is on the defensive line. You saw what Jalen Carter did right out of the gate. Fletcher Cox going to play, but dealing with some ribs as well. But this is the one thing you can never predict. We can sit here and predict who's going to win what, scores, how someone might play. The one thing you can never predict is injury. And that's usually one of the bigger telltale signs of how your year is going to be. Now, if you're going to pick a side to get hurt early, not late. As long as you can get into the playoffs, if you heal up at the right time, that could serve you well, because attrition by the time you get to the playoffs is huge. So you'll see DeAndre Swift, who was the last 3 years in Detroit, now in Philly. He'll get most of the snaps. Now, Nick Sirianni, the head coach, said that he planned on getting him more work anyway. He's a guy that catches the ball out of the backfield, 46, 62, 48 in years 1 through 3 for him in Detroit, so he can do that. We'll see about him running the ball as well. Right now, keep that old line healthy. It's one of the best and one of the best in all of football. But, yeah, I mean, and then you get to a Thursday game, so sometimes you play on Sunday, get somebody nicked who would normally play the following Sunday, but if a game is on Thursday, they may have to miss that game. So, that's the structure of the schedule now. I know players don't like it, having to play these games on Thursday, but it is where we are. So this is something to keep an eye on, is attrition for the Eagles, because they have one of the, if not the best, one of the best rosters in all of football.
Does it concern you all, Dad, with this specific matchup? Because we mentioned second and third level injuries. James Bradbury opposite Darius Slay, which has been one of the best cornerback tandems, against a team in Minnesota that last week threw the ball on 75% of snaps. Yeah. And we know added Jordan Addison opposite Justin Jefferson. They just paid TJ Hawkinson. This is one of those games where, based on what we saw week 1, obviously a super embarrassing loss for the Minnesota Vikings. A lot of people are going to internalize that. But matchup-wise, this could be sort of problematic for Philadelphia if Minnesota can get that passing offense going.
Yeah, to your point about the middle of the field, Hunter Henry for the Patriots had 5 catches over the middle against the Eagles last week. And now you have TJ Hawkinson, certainly a more athletic tight end. Justin Jefferson, it doesn't matter who you have on defense, you're going to worry about him. But, yeah, with TJ Hawkinson coming over in that trade from Detroit last year was a great move, gets the big deal as well. He could really be damaging to that Eagle defense in the middle of the field. That's the one. Justin Jefferson is Justin Jefferson. You have to account for him no matter what. But if you now have a weakness like you may have in the middle of the field, look for a guy like TJ Hawkinson to take advantage of that. So I do worry about that. But Minnesota's defense is not very good. I think this offense for Philadelphia can get going a little bit. I certainly see a Philadelphia win in this game.
Yeah, and that Vikings defense made its debut. Brian Daboll is the defensive coordinator now. Total shift from what they were doing in the prior years. A lot of that too high safety stuff now leaves in favor of getting, guy like Harrison Smith down in the box a little bit more, being more aggressive up front, the way they were in the first half. Dad, did you see all the headlines about Baker Mayfield supposedly getting all the signs that the Vikings were using by the second half of that game? One of his I forget which running back on his team went to the media and said that Baker Mayfield made the joke and said he's a Rangers fan, not an Astro fan, so he doesn't condone that kind of stuff, but didn't really dispel the idea that yeah, they were trying to see the signals that the defense was sending in and felt like they got a beat on that towards the second half.
Anybody who has a problem with that, I got no idea what you're talking about. If a player can look at a sideline and see signals coming in and pick them up, there is zero wrong with that. If you steal somebody's playbook out of their locker for the other team, I could see that being an issue. My God, I mean, seriously, if your signs are that easy to pick up, that's a you problem, not a Baker Mayfield problem. If someone can decipher what you're doing, then that's all on you. I don't even want to hear. I mean, you only play them once, so it's not like you're going to, I guess, spout, maybe you'd want to, if you're in the division, you may keep it to yourself so you can use it again in the next game. But yeah, if you're going to talk about this and have the running back, I said, talk about this, man, that's more to me on Minnesota saying, okay, what did we do to give them the signals? What were they picking up, and how do we need to change them? Because a lot of teams will change every other series by color, by number. You know this, Mike. You can explain it better than me on the O-line of what you're doing with your signals and with your calls at the line. I would try and do that at the line of scrimmage, try and pick up verbiage that I heard in the first quarter. Do I hear it? How many times do I hear it? And are the same things happening out of it? Or is a team changing it every quarter, every third series, at halftime? It all depends on that to try and pick up, because what happens is you think you have it, and then you guess on it, or you don't guess, you think you know it, and then boom, you've screwed up the defense doing that. So you got to be sure. So yeah, if that in fact is true and they picked up their signals, that's a Minnesota problem. That's not anybody else's issue.
I wish I could remember who it was. I heard a coach recently talking about the idea of having another team signals. He said, I wouldn't want to know for that reason you mentioned, because if you think you've got it, now all of a sudden you're banking on just that instead of calling your defense, reading what you're supposed to, you can get yourself into trouble. It clearly worked out for Tampa Bay. And you're right, Dad, there are famous stories about Peyton Manning. You listen to any of his former wide receivers talk about playing for him, and there are notebooks full of code words that would change every single week. They would have to go back in and relearn and reassign the words that meant the actions each and every week, because Peyton Manning was so hyper aware, a guy who dealt so much in all the gesticulating at the line of scrimmage. He was so hyper aware that the great players he was usually staring at across the line of scrimmage were going to be keyed in and trying to work in on this stuff. So you're absolutely right.
Yeah, and so much is called at the line anyway. I mean, my God, especially in college, you can pick it up. They'll go up and call signals and then turn and look to the sideline. It comes back in, and more stuff is called. The NFL stuff is called on the field. It's just a matter, do you want to try and listen to that and pick something up? Or you're just saying, you know what, I'm going to base everything off the keys. Because when we sit there and talk about, I've said this before, talk about analytics in football. There have been analytics forever in football. There's just more now. I got a game plan every Wednesday back in the 80s that told me, situations, down and distances, plays, formations, all analytical stuff that you tried. And I really made sure I ate it all, because I was not the athlete some of those other players were. So if it's 3rd and, 7+ and they're in this formation, you cull it down to they run 2 or 3 plays out of this. You kind of go by that. And you want to trust that because there are times on the field when I thought I heard something, but you are kind of hesitant to guess, thinking, man, if I guess wrong, the hole I'm going to leave on defense is going to be huge.
One of the opposite of a holes on defense I am excited to watch coming up in this game tonight, Jalen Carter versus that injured interior O-line for the Vikings. Going to be very interesting as Thursday Night Football is on Prime. But coming up next, we've got an old quarterback trying a new trick to connect with his teammates.
has been front and center in everything. Aaron Rodgers is the best player the Jets have ever had.
I feel like it's been pretty positive. There's been a lot of good energy around the facility. Every day there's been something that's a little special sign or synchronicity or just a cool moment that reminds me I'm in the right place.
Thank you, Aaron! Good job, buddy.
Down goes Rodgers in the sack for Leonard Floyd. He's coming out of the game.
It's not good.
Those were the season highlights right there after the season-ending Achilles tear from Aaron Rodgers that dashed the hopes of Jet fans everywhere. Those poor Jets fans, they can't have nice things. Guys, he finally posted on Instagram, so we got to hear from him himself. He posted this long post about how he's feeling, and there were emojis being used in it. And he ended it by saying, "The night is darkest before the dawn, and I shall rise again." So, interesting. I love the, and I shall rise again. Shall, using the word shall. I don't know. I thought that was kind of funny.
I was gonna say, do people still use the word
like,
shall
okay, Jesus,
outside of an Instagram post now? Yeah, that's a very biblical word.
Yeah.
Well, I think Aaron Rodgers, we've heard him talk about things in the past. It doesn't shock me that the word shall came out of his mouth.
Like I said, the
You're
guy did say
right.
synchronicity before, too. I was sitting around here like, can he do that?
I mean, listen, the thing about Aaron Rodgers, and it'll be a quicker conversation because he's gone by the wayside. As I said, it's going to be a forgotten thing, and they're going on with Zach Wilson. I firmly believe he's going to try and come back next year. I firmly believe he is not going to want to end his career on an injury. The guy has not been hurt a ton in his career. This is a bad injury, make no mistake about it, but he's got a lot of time. You got to start spinning it forward. Surgery soon, start the rehab. 9 months to a year could have put him right back at more on the 9-month side, right back to, that training camp time. I fully expect him trying to play next year and not retire from this unless there's some monster setback from it.
Yeah, no, and you heard, I think Woody Johnson, the owner, mentioned he hadn't asked Aaron much about it because he's processing a lot right now. But we heard from damn near everybody that's got a connection to Aaron Rodgers, right? They went back and asked Matt LaFleur. They talked to Jordan Love, the guys that were with him last year. And that does seem to be the sentiment from everybody, is based on the kind of worker that Aaron Rodgers is, based on his approach to all this, pride, all that stuff. It seems like he's going to be back. And based on the Instagram post that Jesse read, yeah, you don't put the night is darkest before the dawn up there unless you're planning to come riding over that hill, like Lord of the Rings and the Two Towers, the Battle of Helm's Deep.
Which, by the way, I looked it up, and that's just kind of a motivational saying. The night isn't actually darkest before the dawn.
Okay, yeah, I saw people questioning that, and it's right, because wouldn't it actually be like the lightest the night's gonna be, because the dawn is right there, like the sun is just below the horizon. It's darkest at like midnight. You go out there, I live near the ocean, you go stand out where the ocean meets the sky at like the dead of night. It's hard to tell the difference between the two, but right before the dawn, it's easy. The sun's creeping up back there, getting ready to do its thing.
Yeah, so that's just a saying that has continued through the years, despite it not being true.
Not going to lie, I don't know when it's darkest because I'm asleep.
I mean, as am I, fair enough.
Which again, it would be darkest while you're asleep, so that's not right before the dawn, but
it just doesn't sound as cool.
No, it doesn't. It definitely sounds cool, and if there's one thing Aaron Rodgers is trying to master online, it's how to sound cool in front of all his young friends, which, Jesse, has been a problem that another quarterback has been trying to address and might be able to take a little more creative approach with going forward, as we got some news about upcoming content. Yeah, so Netflix is reportedly going to have Matt Stafford be one of their quarterbacks for their series quarterbacks. So, you know, we've gotten some interesting press out of Matt Stafford apparently not being able to connect with his younger teammates, his wife talking about it on her podcast. And she's hysterical. So I think this is going to be awesome because we're going to get an insider look at what's going on in their household. And they've got a bunch of kids, and it seems great and chaotic, and we love that. Yeah, I feel like Kelly Stafford probably put the bug in Matthew's ear that this could be really good for all of us. That's the only name that we've heard so far. We heard a lot more this offseason, Dad, about guys turning this down. by the way, Aaron Rodgers, you could do us all a big favor. I mean, he seemed to really enjoy being on Hard Knocks there, watching Aaron Rodgers' rehab process. Listen, for better or for worse, and I think it's generally for worse, post The Last Dance, everybody thinks that everything that happens is worthy of some sort of long-form documentary. Aaron Rodgers' rehab process might actually be interesting enough to do that with if you want to find yet another angle to attack in the quarterback documentary.
No, I want him to go be on like Ancient Aliens. Those aliens that got presented to in Mexico. I mean, I feel like he's injured now. He's got to start his rehab process. He should just go lead an expedition to find the aliens.
Yeah. I would like that because I think we'll talk about that one a little later. Of them saying we aren't alone. No kidding. Anybody that thinks we're alone in this universe it's ridiculous. But we digress. I think the biggest thing for people deciding, because we always hear, oh, why don't they want to do that show? Or why did this guy turn it down? Or why does this team not want to do Hard Knocks? There's the thought process of not wanting having a camera around all the time, right? It all depends on who you are, because that's what this quarterback series is. I mean, this isn't just professional. This is personal. This is getting into your home life. You have to let the cameras in. And, his wife, Kelly, she battled that brain tumor, had that surgery back in 19, I think it was. I mean, she definitely had some issues. They have, again, as we mentioned, 4 daughters. And because we get current players and or wives out talking, do you think Matthew Stafford was a little bit, hey, hon, maybe don't mention that I don't, know the younger players on my team? Maybe because sometimes when you're talking publicly, you're going to say things maybe you don't want to be out there, or the other person doesn't want to be out there. But that's the whole thing. What's your comfort level with cameras being around all the time? You see a lot of reality shows. You guys correct me if I'm wrong. People that do reality shows are those that are trying maybe to become stars, right? Try and hit that next level. I mean, Matthew Stafford's made a ton of money, has, been in the league a long time. He's been, somewhat of a star quarterback in the league. It's not like he needs to do this, but it sounds like he wants to do it. So everybody has their different reasoning for wanting to do something, because I'm sure it is very invasive.
Well, like you said, Matthew Stafford, very established and everything. But, Kelly Stafford has her podcast. She has maybe some brand deals. I don't know. Maybe she's we need this show so we can become the Kardashians here. We can elevate our brand.
And, I mean, if you're Matthew Stafford, you're coming off a year you were banged up. You've always been a quarterback that I think people have had, conflicting feelings about all the talent, but what did it manifest in Detroit before he came over? People saw with like Kirk Cousins, who's one of the most made fun of quarterbacks in the NFL at times, what it did, the positive PR coming off that. Once you see all the work that goes into the position and all the stuff that we know would come with a guy like Matthew Stafford. But you're right, Dad, everyone's comfort level. I saw Full Swing with Netflix is getting ready for season 2. And I saw Zach Johnson and the guys from the Ryder Cup say that they were going to limit access to the team's room at the Ryder Cup because some guys raised concerns about having it in there. So as we've seen this inundate the sport, and Hard Knocks has done it forever, but as it's worked its way into other places, we're seeing guys figure out their level of comfortability with, hey, there are certain spots that are supposed to be sacred and safe spaces for me to kind of decompress with all this, and we got to find out where those borders are.
I think also with editing, it changes the game a little bit because someone can get a bad edit.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
That's true.
We, as veterans of watching reality TV, I can assure you the edit is crucial.
Absolutely. So you could end up with a bad edit, and it's like, well, I didn't really say it in that context, or what have you.
So here's my thought on this: that Kelly and Matthew sat down. Matthew had a long discussion on, I don't want to do it for this reason, this reason, this reason. He went on a 5-10 minute rant about why he doesn't want to do it, and Kelly said, I think it'll be good for us. And he said, okay, we're doing it. I mean, that's kind of how it works, right? I mean, that's really how the decision-making works in the household. I think we all understand that.
Absolutely.
I know I do.
Yeah. You know what's good for you?
Right? Well, it's the happy wife, happy life applies to everybody here, regardless of race, class, gender, anything that goes into this.
That's why you don't have a wife, right?
Yes, exactly. I'm a single father of none, and so the only person I have to answer to is me. And I somehow still get vetoed in my own house, which is probably something I need to bring up with a therapist. Coming up next, though, I want to find out a little bit about young Mike Golic Sr. with our next guest. Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., Jesse Cofield. Should be a fun hour coming up. We're hoping to talk to the Hall of Famer Warren Moon here very soon, as well as my old roommate and recently retired Pro Bowl tight end Kyle Rudolph. Dad, I should have said too, Warren Moon, one of your first teammates in the NFL when you got drafted by the Houston Oilers.
Yeah, I mean, and if people don't forget about him, he was with the Edmonton Eskimos for a time before he got to the NFL and was incredible. I think he was a 5-time a champ out there. So he had a great career even before he got to the NFL, and then obviously had a great career as well. My first quarterback down with the Houston Oilers. So always good to see Warren. I usually see him at the Super Bowl and places like that. It's always a fun time to catch up with people you played with or played against, and I always enjoy seeing Warren.
So we're hopeful to talk to him very soon. And one of the things I want to ask him about, Dad, and certainly get your opinion on too, because it's the hot topic right now. Not since the Super Bowl has so much grass been talked about in the lead up, but we've got that now after the Aaron Rodgers injury. The NFLPA has come out behind their new executive director, calling for the league to change the field surfaces to natural grass. Dad, we've seen the PA and the league kind of at odds over this for a while. The PA released studies and reports saying that the uptick in non-contact injuries on artificial surfaces was there. The NFL disputes with their internal numbers. Where do you fall on this, Dad, as someone that once played on basically carpet on concrete in the NFL on the debate over playing surfaces and player safety?
Yeah, and this has no carry in the weight of this discussion, but it is pretty funny when I look at. I mean, this new turf put in at Met Stadium is supposed to have some of the best, or MetLife Stadium, the most give like natural grass, and that's what you look for kind of as a player. You don't want, at the vet I had concrete and carpet over it, as you said. It was horrible. So I would have loved playing on the stuff today, but that doesn't mean the stuff today is better than grass, and that's the argument. So it doesn't, while we may have played on basically carpet covered concrete, we're in a new era here where this is more economical. As we know, there's no upkeep to it, and it's better than the AstroTurf we played on. The thing about it is, though, Mike, is you get differences of opinion. Lloyd Howell's a new NFLPA executive director, and he said moving all stadium fields to high-quality natural grass is the easiest decision the NFL can make. The players overwhelmingly prefer it, and the data is clear that grass is simply safer than artificial turf. Now, the league puts out a study that says there has been no uptick in, and we usually talk about non-contact injuries as opposed to contact. And this, with Aaron Rodgers, was not a non-contact injury. There was contact. He was grabbed around the waist, and his foot stuck kind of in the ground, and the pressure went down on the heel, and you saw the pop in the tendon. So this wasn't non-contact. So there's differing thought processes on what effect AstroTurf has in grass turf, but upkeep it saves the owners a lot of money. Now, the one thing that works in favor of the players, and they say out loud, and they should, is, wait a minute, the World Cup's coming here in soccer,
right,
and we're changing fields to grass from this AstroTurf. So you are saying that it's better for these soccer players to play on grass than it is on artificial turf. Now, I'm sure they're going to put out some reasoning, or there is some reasoning for them saying why they're doing this.
Money is the reason.
Well, so now let me get to where we are now with the union saying they should do it for the health and safety of their players. This is what they should do as an investment in their players. That all sounds well and good. We all work hand in hand, arm in arm, to do what's best for our employees. I mean, come on. When have we heard that line? I don't care what business you're in. You know when? I don't know if it'll ever happen, quite honestly, but if it does, do you know when grass fields will go back in? When it's negotiated. That's when it'll happen. When the union and the players will have to give up something in the CBA to get natural grass. Owners ain't just going to give it.
Players, I get it, but what a farce then to put out publicly that you care about player safety at all. If the players are telling you that's the surface they like best, and your retort is, well, we got to wait till the World Cup, it just gives up the goods. It's all money. They want turf fields in here because it saves them a little bit of money, and it allows them to host monster truck rallies and concerts in there. That's the bottom line. Why we would trust their numbers on this when we see all of it's laid bare. Like, there is no secret. There's no hiding from it here. And if it wasn't obvious before, the upcoming World Cup portion of this that you mentioned, where the only way they were going to allow the U.S. to host the World Cup was if they laid down grass for these fields. I've heard they do it for friendlies as well when teams come over here. It's the money portion of all this. So again, the league is looking in your face and lying to you when it tells you that player safety is the motive or something they truly care about. They care about it only to the point where it makes them money.
It makes them money, or they get to use it as a negotiation piece, which is what this is going to be. And did you see players like David Bakhtiari, who barked about this right away, is trying to get the fans involved, right? Let's the players and the fans come together as one to say we want to see the players on natural grass. All that sounds great to try and, because when it's just players versus owners, a lot of times the owners are going to win. So David, smartly so, is saying bring the fans into it, the ones that are actually making money for the owners by spending their hard-earned money to make push for these grass fields. And the owners are just going to say, blah, 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 blah. If it's going to happen, it's going to be negotiated, and you're going to give up something for it. And even that being said, Mike, I don't know unless there is, and maybe there was, this is what I don't know. They need, unless they already have it, an independent study, somebody that the NFLPA and the league agree on to give us a report. Because right now you hear the union side saying a report says there's higher non-contact, an NFL report that says there's no uptick in non-contact injuries on artificial turf. So like I said, I don't know if they've done an independent study, but boy, what a time for being needing an independent study, right? Someone to say, both sides to say, okay, we're going to rely on what this person says, and let's see what they say.
But I guess at this point, why would the NFL agree to that? And why would we trust who they select for any of this? They don't seem trustworthy on this subject because we know what their motives are. It's not like the NFL is just walking into this argument trying to say, well, no, we believe that this surface is actually going to be good for the players or anything like that. No, it's good for us. It's good for the money we make away from football games. It's good for all the ancillary things we want to do. Their motives in this have nothing to do with player health and safety. And so letting them use that as a crutch to do something that the players aren't comfortable with, to me, automatically undercuts the argument in the conversation from the start.
But we're not saying let the league pick an independent person. That has to be agreed upon. So the union could pick them. I mean, the league isn't dictating everything here if you're getting an independent study. And again, I don't know if the league even wants to do that because I don't think they want to get rid of artificial turf. And the only way they would, as I said, would be by negotiation. So, yeah, I mean, to hear that safety is the number one priority, we know we can chuckle at that. We know they want it, and we know the reasons they want it. So if the players don't want it anymore, it's going to have to come at a price to where players think it should be just naturally done because it's better for the employees. The employer is saying, well, if that's something you want, you're going to have to give up something for it, even if it's going to happen at all. Like I said, I don't know if it's going to happen at all. I think this is just going to be, unfortunately, another losing situation for the players, as I think the owners are perfectly happy with this artificial turf.
And I'm sure the reason the owners are trying to prove this about the instance of injury is because the best argument that you could have on the other side for why ownership should want this too, and Dad, quite frankly, it was the same argument we made on drug testing when it came to marijuana and street drugs, not performance-enhancing drugs, was why would you want your players, your stars, the players that you're handing fistfuls of money to, missing time on something that feels more preventable? That's the player argument in this as well, is this should be something we're all rallied around, is trying to do the thing that preserves the product. It's the reason you got all those cute rules around the quarterback. It's the reason you have all those rules around special teams right now, is because, yeah, the players want to argue for their own health and safety, but we know everyone's motivated by their own selfish desires. And for ownership in the league, you should at the very least want the biggest stars in your sport out on the field playing and drawing in eyeballs to your product.
Yeah, to them, there isn't enough of a problem with AstroTurf, field turf, according to their studies, to overtake that, to where you're losing half of the starting quarterbacks. You know, we all know what always affects change in anything. It's money, right? Is how your money is affected. That's why David Bakhtiari was trying to get the fans involved. Hell, he was probably talking through the fans to the advertisers, because that's what's going to affect change. If all of a sudden money is coming out of the owner's pocket, or not the normal amount is going into the owner's pocket, that is going to invoke change. Until that happens, as I said, you know, when you watch the old Charlie Brown shows and you hear the teacher talk and all you hear is want, 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 that's all the owners hear until their money is affected. That's when action occurs.
I mean, you wonder how a guy like Woody Johnson feels right now, because the other thing that usually affects change in the NFL is when something bad happens to a quarterback on a big-time stage. And we saw that was the most watched Monday Night Football game in the ESPN era of Monday Night Football. That was the most important quarterback maybe the Jets have ever had, and he went down in a heap. And Dad, I understand you saying it's a contact injury, but people still point to it wasn't the most violent contact we've ever seen. It wasn't the most brutal hit that we've ever seen someone take, and the foot stuck in a ground a way that a lot of players think wouldn't have happened if that had been natural grass that had some give and would shift underneath your feet. And so this is one of those spots where usually this is what we ask. This is how the overtime rule got changed, because it was Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes. And damn it, we wanted to see more football. And in the past, it's been, hey, well, Tom Brady got hit below the leg, and so now we got to make sure that doesn't happen to quarterbacks no more. Aaron Rodgers going down in a heap should, with that pattern in mind, be enough to have something happen on this front.
Well, a couple of things, Mike. Because changing a rule is different than changing all the fields and the expense that goes with it and all the other things then you may have trouble doing on that, the money it will cost you. And, you know, it's just, again, these owners, they're already getting, so you mentioned the highest rated Monday night game. Well, every team is already getting X amount from the TV deal. So that is not affecting the money that Woody Johnson is getting. That's not affecting it. And as far as you got to pay them all that money, they're already making the money they're going to make from sold out stadiums of what they had, to revenue from merchandise, to revenue from the television deal. So their money, as I talk about being the most important thing, is not going to be affected, even though Aaron Rodgers
Well, I mean, the money he's paying Aaron Rodgers is now sunk cost. You're not getting any value from it. You're paying him millions of dollars. You gave up tons of assets, and now you don't have your quarterback anymore. Like, they're going to flex them out of a bunch of those primetime games that they're in once they have the ability to at that point in the season the rest of the year. So there is some blowback for this. I get most of the rest of that's locked in place, but the league loves these gaudy TV numbers. It's what they use the next time they walk into negotiations and say, hey, we'd like more money to broadcast our fine game.
Listen, I agree with you. And so let's this one injury, though, isn't going to change anything. It's just not, because the cost is too high, according to the owners or for the owners, to make the change based off this. Now, and you don't base it off of one thing, even though you changed a rule occasionally.
I was going to say, we've changed a lot of rules off one thing.
Again, changing a rule is different than changing something that is going to cost you a lot of money. So there is a difference in that. And that's at the end of the day, That's what the owners rely on, is the money that's going into their pocket. So this battle is going to continue. I don't know where it ends. I don't know where, like I said, an independent study looks, because we know both sides have their own study out that one says one thing, one says another. Who the hell do you want to believe? I know a lot of people don't believe the league in anything. And listen, they've given reason for players not to believe them. Absolutely no doubt about it. But this is one that has a lot of cost involved to it, which makes the fight even more difficult than, oh my God, we just lost Tom Brady on a low hit. Change the rule. You can't hit the quarterback low anymore.
Okay, wait, I'm going to jump in here really quick, guys, because I'm reading, as you guys are talking, I'm like Googling it. I'm trying to figure out how much it would cost to actually change to grass fields. And it's saying $11.9 million.
And I'm sure for the owners, they're factoring in the upkeep of all that,
right.
the things in perpetuity. But still, and I understand this is where the greed of it all comes in. These are people that are wired the way most billionaires are, is you don't get rich by giving up at some point extra cost that you don't feel like you need to incur. And so for them, it's the difference of, it's a pittance compared to what the NFL makes on any given year. This is the most profitable league in North American sports. And so that's why to the rest of us, it seems ridiculous. But to Dad's point, seems like a sticking point that they're not going to move past. I want to hit on something else that's facing the owners right now on a different side of things. The lawsuit that we have going on between Jim Trotter, the former NFL Network journalist, filing a retaliation lawsuit against the NFL on Tuesday, alleging that his contract was not renewed because he called out Commissioner Roger Goodell about the league's lack of diversity. We all saw that viral clip. It was in the media leading up to the Super Bowl. Roger Goodell makes himself available. We usually see his year in review thing there. And Jim Trotter pressed him on the league's diversity track record, the hiring of African-American and minority coaches, everything there in a way that is usually uncommon for NFL media and their in-house outfit there. But Dad, part of what came out in this lawsuit, not just that, what we knew was going on with Jim, but also the things alleged in there in the lawsuit features a timeline of his termination and accuses Cowboys owner Jerry Jones and Bills owner Terry Pegula of making discriminatory comments when asked about player protests and the league's diversity efforts. For Jerry Jones, it was something akin to, well, if the black players don't like it, they should buy their own league and then they can employ who they want. For Terry Pegula, it went a little bit farther, and the quote alleged is him after the protests that took place in 2020 saying, quote, if the black players don't like it here, they should go back to Africa and see how bad it is. And Dad, while these are allegations right now, and this will be a he said portion of the proceedings here, for the NFL, this is pretty dire considering where they sit in the world of lawsuits surrounding racial discrimination and their hiring policies in the NFL, because we've always talked about the hiring policies ultimately boil down to the feelings of 31 owners around the NFL and how they're going to do it. All of a sudden, if you can point to concrete evidence that, this is something that is in the heart of at least one of these owners, now you open up Pandora's box for what the players and coaches can point to.
So you mentioned the comment that he made, that Trotter says Pegula made. Pegula put out a statement, said, I'm horrified that anyone would connect me with an allegation of this kind. Racism has no place in our society. I'm personally disgusted that my name is associated with this complaint. Jerry Jones said of what Trotter said about him, the representation made by Trotter at a conversation that occurred over 3 years ago with myself and VP of Player Personnel Will McClay is simply not accurate. So they're saying they didn't say it. Listen, I've said this before, that the NFL's track record is horrific with minority hiring, from coaches to management positions. And as Trotter said, to the media part of it as well, it's horrible, and it's been horrible. The rules they have established haven't worked. They haven't. And now he is accusing these two owners of saying this. Let me tell you what, if it's proved these owners said it, and we also have to understand a lot of these owners have been around, we talk about the old white people, in what's, in their thought process from years ago. It just you kind of wonder, what is the reasoning there aren't enough minorities or there aren't, enough hired to be coaches or in general manager or managerial positions. It's a head scratcher that's been going on. The league has not figured it out at this point, and they've not done a great job with it.
Yeah, never been a black majority owner, 8 black general managers, 3 NFL coaches who identify as black, and this is a league in which 60 to 70% of the players are black.
And that's always been the thing that I think has stuck out to a lot of people is, and we hear about pipelines, we hear about all this stuff, but the bottom line is, cronyism, nepotism, all these things that pop in here, and people we hear all the time that guys are just comfortable with. You've heard how many NFL owners say, I see a lot of myself in this head coach, and the subtext of that can sometimes be damning. Dad, to your point about if this is going to be able to be proven or not, that feels difficult because I don't know how these are presented. Was it an email form? These things are often difficult to impossible to actually prove, but I'm sure for Jim Trotter and his efforts in this lawsuit, and now really for the coaching side, and we've seen Brian Flores and a number of the coaches in the lawsuit against the NFL, now the sentiment is out there, though. And it's something that, to your point, based on the track record of this league, based on the age and demographic of ownership, sounds believable to enough people to where now this sentiment is something I'm sure that people will latch onto and potentially go back to. So we will wait and see how the rest of that plays out, but certainly shocking revelations there in that lawsuit filed by Jim Trotter against the NFL. Unfortunately, not able to get in touch with the Hall of Famer Warren Moon. Technical difficulties there, and so hopefully we'll be able to get him back here on the show at some point soon. Stick with us, though. We still got plenty more coming up in the tank here, including, in just a little bit, former teammate Kyle Rudolph going to stop by about his new ventures in broadcasting next. Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. We'll get to Pro Bowl tight end, recently retired Kyle Rudolph, going to join us here in about 10 minutes. Talk about his transition into media right now. He's joined us on the dark side here, doing some Fox Sports Radio on Sundays. He's calling some college football games this fall. He was hitting that up in the spring as well. So we'll see how he's enjoying life as a media hack right now. I always said, Dad, it's a nice transition. And Kyle played, 12 great years in the NFL, has a ton of great stuff to show. He's going to be honored by the Vikings after week 3. But it is kind of nice, and I'm sure at the age that we're at now for him, who's been getting hit a lot lately, to go to a job where no one can legally hit you.
And you get to stay involved in the game. The best thing I've always said about being in the media and then calling NFL games or college games is you don't have to ice down after them anymore. You're not sore. And the thing, and this comment I'm going to make doesn't include Kyle. He's always been great with the media. It's always been interesting seeing the guys that battle with the media or have problems with the media or get on the media, then end up in the media business, right? After they've had problem with the way they're covered, they're going to go out and do the coverage themselves. That was always kind of a chuckle.
Oh yeah, watching guys become the thing they used to hate the most is a fascinating transformation. But like you said, this has always kind of been Kyle's wheelhouse, so I think it's going to be a pretty seamless fit for him. The one thing he might be able to learn from you is how to stay properly caffeinated during the show. Dad, I'm trying to decide, because I'm a pretty nasty person when it comes to like eating habits and stuff like that. You have installed a coffee maker right in your little studio at home there in the basement of your guy's house. It's right next to you on the show. It's apparently so loud you muted yourself. Yeah, okay, all right, he's going to bring it right over.
Oh, we can see it. Wow, there it is.
All right, so I need people listening to answer if this is nasty or not. So Dad's got the coffee maker right there because he can't be bothered to walk 10 feet to the kitchenette that's outside away from him. And we have short breaks in this show, all these things that I know he's going to use as an excuse. So he's got one coffee cup that he's left down there for the entire week that he uses, drinks the coffee out of. He puts cream and sugar in his coffee. And then when he's empty, he leaves it down there and he just reuses it again the next day. I haven't done anything but take my coffee black for a while, but even when I see the bottom of my cup, it's still got some of the residue and the nasty on it there, and I give it a little rinse before I go back in the next day's proceedings. Is my dad nasty? Jesse, you're like the outside of this family here, but you're part of the show family. Mm-hmm. Is this objectively nasty? Am I too close to the forest to see the trees?
I am going to have to side with GoJo on this one. I think it's objectively kind of nasty because you're drinking from the cup. There's backwash going in there. Your mouth is going on the side of the cup. So
dirty mouth.
Facts are facts. There's bacteria in that cup, and it's just getting reused. Are you at least washing it on the weekends?
On weekends, I wash it. And here's my argument. So it's a Keurig that you have to pour the water in just one cup at a time. It only takes one cup. So I use the cup that I drink out of, and I run and I fill it with water, and I put it in the reservoir, and I make my cup of coffee. And then when the show's over, I usually have 2 cups and a cup before the show. I'll leave the cup here, won't rinse it out, and I'll come back 22 hours later to start the next show. And you know what's in that cup? Stuff I already drank. You talk about the residual. It's my residual. I'm cool with it. It's not somebody else's residual. You know, and you give me a hard time for going in, Mike, your mother's bathwater. I have no problem with doing that. So why would you think I have a problem with drinking?
Oh, Jesse, were you not aware of this?
Sorry, what was that?
Oh, yeah. For anyone unfamiliar, including Jesse Cofield, my father will not draw his own bath, will not take a bath on his own. What he does is, the move is every night he'll lean over and he'll look at my mom and go, "Hun, we thinking about a bath?" And that is my mom's signal that it's time for her to go and take a bath. She'll go enjoy it for however long she does. And then she'll leave her retread bathwater in for my dad to then go stew in. He sits in mom's soup in the bathtub and then attempts to clean himself.
Oh.
So right now, Jesse and Mike, are you calling my wife dirty? Is that what you're saying?
I'm calling her a human being. Yes, her body contains dirt after a long day. You guys work out. You're both very active. I appreciate that both about you. And Jesse's face said it all here. You said this to an outsider who didn't know this, and she's horrified about the man that she now works with every day.
It is gross. That's gross. It's yuck.
Man,
it's yucky.
I love it. I get in. It's nice and hot. I throw a little hot water over the top of it as well. I have no problem with it. Just like I have no problem, leaving my cup down here. It's my residual. It's my, coffee, whatever, at the bottom of this thing that I just boil up again once I fill it with water and put it in the reservoir. So it doesn't, listen, I think there are times in life when people don't get enough bacteria in them to help them fight bacteria.
What are you, a baby now who's got to be exposed to bacteria?
Listen,
you got to take them to restaurants so they're used to this.
Yes, let them eat dirt occasionally. Mike ate a donut. Mike ate a donut hole that was in a tire well for an entire ride home from his high school back to home, pulled it right off of the tire and ate it. I mean, we had no problem with our kids eating some things that maybe had some bacteria and it made their guts strong.
So now that, I'll say this. Now that I know about your bath thing, I don't think the coffee thing is gross.
Comparatively, it's like the Max Payne theory. Now that you've seen it, experienced it, it is worse. The coffee thing is all the sudden.
Yeah, I don't
just
have
a
a problem with the coffee thing anymore.
Here's the thing. You know, when we all get to see each other, we don't see each other in a while. Like next time we come to Boston, we'll see Jesse and Mike. You'll give her a hug, and I'll go to give her a hug. She's gonna back away from me.
No,
You're gonna
no.
have no part of giving me a hug.
I'm not. You're still cleaner than if you didn't bathe, you know. But realistically, it's probably not, you know, in the Western world, we're a little OCD about our cleaning habits. So realistically speaking, it's probably a practice that gets used all over the world. You reuse the bathwater. It's probably not really a big deal. Here in the Western world, we might think it's a little yuck, but you know what? I think I'm just accepting these things as I learn them. You know,
Yeah,
I'm still going to give you a hug.
I pee in the shower as well. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's normal stuff. That's normal.
Right? Okay?
Everybody pees in the shower.
You don't pee in the bath water that you're in, right?
No. What?
Well, no, I know you.
No.
I know you don't, Jesse. I'm asking, you know, the man soup over here.
No, I don't pee in the bathtub. No.
That's not very. You don't sound like you have a lot of
kidding. No,
conviction.
I don't know.
I just
That would be
appreciate that my
awful.
dad treats every part of his life like a cast iron skillet. You know, it's more flavor sealed in there if you don't. You're not supposed to clean it. It's like jeans and the skillet. You're not supposed. That was the biggest revelation I had ever heard. Was you're not supposed to actually wash your jeans. You're supposed to let them get worn in. That's I guess how they were supposed to work. I took that and run with it. I don't know if that was hearsay. I don't know if that was like a one-time thing that got debunked by the internet, but I've been running with that ever since. I got crusted jeans.
Hey,
Not my
why
Wranglers, though. Those are brand new and awesome. Love them.
There.
Those feel good.
Those do feel good.
You guys done ripping on me?
Yeah, I am done ripping on you,
Done?
Dad.
You're just supplying the. How can we? You know, I find out
supplying the ammo, aren't
something
I?
new every day about you. I love it.
Yeah, and you didn't want it to be that gross, though, I guess, because your face was a bit horrified.
Listen, I got
Mike
a
brought that
toddler
up.
at home. Like, there's not a lot that grosses me out right now.
That's true.
That is-
You're right about that. Yeah.
But the fact that, again, this is now the second comparison to a baby that my dad has been a part of in this segment here. We are like one diaper change short of hitting for the cycle in a way that deeply disturbs me as his 34-year-old son.
Yeah. Yeah.
I wish I had a better answer for you. I'm sorry.
You don't,
This is who I am. Accept me. Accept me for who I am.
We do accept you. We do.
I mean, going all the way back to the coffee cup, though, the thing that disappoints me most in this, as someone who often chastises his children for being lazy in areas that he deems doable. You and Mom are both hypercritical of anyone that uses DoorDash or any of those other services that deliver food or groceries, and yet you're walking over to the sink to fill up the cup to use for the water, and you can't be bothered to just give it a quick rinse or wash. You're right there, and instead you're just self-containing an endless loop of bacteria and residue in a way that is actually needless, in a way that is quite literally one of the lazier things I've heard you do, because normally you're not a lazy person.
I don't think it's lazy. I just think I don't feel the bacteria affects me because it's mine. So I just don't do it. And yes, your sister ordered a Sprite and had it delivered. That's the
was in
epitome of
college.
laziness.
That was in
That's
college.
still the epitome of laziness.
That
Come
is
on.
wild. One Sprite?
One.
I mean, when you're drunk, those are the things that happen. Coming up next, let's order a former NFL tight end here on GoJo and Golic. Save us, Kyle. Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., and we're excited to welcome in former NFL tight end, 12 great years between the Minnesota Vikings, the New York Giants, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, former Walter Payton Man of the Year nominee, Pro Bowler, and former roommate and teammate Kyle Rudolph to the show right now as he makes the transition. Rudy, from the career I always knew you wanted in the NFL, ever since I've known you, that was the goal and dream, to now a media hack like the rest of us, man. How's it feel?
It feels great. I had my first opportunity to do the radio thing this weekend on Sunday night as that incredible Sunday night football game was playing out. So thankfully I wasn't in that booth. I was able to talk about the 14 other games that happened that day. And it was a ton of fun for me. I feel like this really wasn't something I ever considered throughout the course of my playing days. But as I started to near the end and figure out what's next, football has been a part of my life since I was 5 years old. And I feel like TV and radio and podcasts and different variations of media allow me to keep the game of football within an arm's length away. It allows me to, people always think being in the media is an easy way to remain around the game. I don't think that's necessarily true. There's still a lot of work that goes into it, but it allows me to have that work done on my time and allows me to make my own schedule and still be around the kids and Jordan a lot. So it's been great so far. One show down.
And many, many to go. So Kyle, talk about, there's always that part of leaving what you do. And you just mentioned you've been playing football since you're 5 years old, all the way to 12 years in the NFL. And as I've always said, people retire for different reasons. Injury. For me, nobody called, so the league retired me. You could have got, my son-in-law, Ben Broniker, could have kept playing but wanted to start going to med school. You could have kept playing if you wanted to. Why did you decide to say, okay, that's enough?
For me, the decision impacted more people than just myself. I talked about one of the things that I love about being in the media now is it allows me to spend more time around my kids, at home with my family. We were in Minnesota for 10 years, and of those 10 years, 5 was just Jordan and I, 5 were with kids. But we were in one place for so long. A lot of guys in the league, new team every year, new city, they're moving all over the place. We never experienced that. And then went to New York for a year, went to Tampa for a year. And ultimately this year, had I kept playing, was going to be our 4th team in 4 years, thus moving my children again to another new city. And ultimately for me, it really wasn't worth it, especially because, last year I waited. And ultimately I felt like I picked the best situation possible coming to Tampa to play with Tom Brady and a team that had a ton of talent. They had won a Super Bowl 2 years prior, made a playoff run the year before. I was like, this is incredible. I can't ask for anything better. and it stunk. Like, it was a terrible situation. We underachieved greatly as a team. I didn't get to do the things that I thought I was going to get to do personally as a player. So it really created this perspective for me this offseason as I was starting to look at a few teams in free agency. And ultimately, I thought to myself, like, what keeps that from happening again? Is it worth the risk? Is it worth the chance for me to try to play one more year to move my family again and pull my kids out of a school so they can go to now their 6th school in 3 years? And ultimately, I just decided that that wasn't the case. And then ultimately, it was what's next. Getting involved in media, being more present in the company Altru that I started to raise money for charity. So there were a lot of things that ultimately at that point excited me more than going back to training camp and playing football for a 13th year.
Yeah, and it makes total sense when you lay it out like that. But I know for you, this has been your dream forever. And so that doesn't come easy, but having so much to look forward to certainly can ease that transition. And hopefully that's the case. So everyone's going to get to listen to you now on Sunday nights on Fox Sports Radio. Kick it over there. I know you're calling some football games in Big Ten country as well this year. So we're looking forward to that. But Kyle, what was it like sitting and now just getting to truly watch as a fan and an analyst this weekend here? Like, what stuck out to you as now you get to look at the game from that 30,000-foot view?
Well, for me, I had only prepared from that side as someone who was going to be in the booth and analyzing the game. But for me, I had to talk about 14 games that day. And it was very surface level stuff. It's immediate reactions from that day in the NFL, to whereas in the spring, I called 2 games. I spent an entire week preparing for those individual games. So separating the 2 ways of preparing, and for me, preparing for the radio show was, it was kind of a great excuse because I could tell Jordan and the kids, I have to sit here on the couch and watch football all day. Something that I hadn't done prior to. And usually Henry, Finn, Andy, they don't let me just sit around and be on the couch. But I was like, no, I'm working. And they were like, why do you have to talk about football now? Like, we want to go outside. We want to play. So I was just simply observing as a fan, things that stuck out to me throughout the course of the day. I would try to jot them down. So ultimately, when we would reference that game on the show that night, I could go back and be like, oh yeah, I remember watching that, or, hopping on and looking at all the box scores and the stats. And, fortunately for me, having played as long as I did, I can kind of go through the game flow and look at the stats and really understand how that game played out, even if I didn't watch every play. If I just follow from afar and then go back, it actually helps me really understand the nuances of how things happen, because for 12 years, every week on Wednesday, you hear the keys to the game. What do we have to do to win? What do we have to do to not lose? And I go back and I look at this stuff from a game that I may not have watched every play. And it's glaring when I see that. And I'm like, I immediately go back to that team meeting on a Wednesday. And I'm like, yeah, these are probably things they talked about in that team meeting on Wednesday. And obviously didn't get it done on Sunday.
Kyle, just a couple minutes left. The topic now today, after Aaron Rodgers gets hurt, David Bakhtiari starts to yell again for, we need to get rid of the field turf and put natural grass. You've been playing on these fields for 12 years. What do you think about that?
Well, I know certainly coming to Florida this past year and practicing on grass every day was incredible for an old guy. I know why people retire in Florida. Warm weather and grass, made my body feel so much better. But ultimately, I was someone who played 10 years in an indoor stadium, with the exception of the 2 years we were outside. The 2 years we were outside, we were also on turf at the University of Minnesota. 1 year in New York, turf. So I played 11 years of home games on artificial turf. And, although the technology has come a long way, it just doesn't really make sense to me why teams that have outdoor venues and have the ability to have natural grass wouldn't have it. So, certainly there are teams, the Minnesota Vikings, for instance, they're not rolling grass in there. You can't roll grass out into Minneapolis in the wintertime and expect it to grow. So, you can't have that indoor grass like Arizona and Vegas has. So there will always be teams that have artificial turf. But if we can limit those to a much smaller number, certainly we all see the numbers. Everybody sees the numbers of non-contact injuries and just the sheer amount of injuries that happen on artificial turf. Trust me, I can tell you firsthand, it's so much better playing on grass. It's just your body feels better. It's really what was meant to be. You think about the force and the impact that we're putting into the ground, and that's put on us when we're tackled. Grass gives, turf doesn't.
Yep.
And, you know, that's just the bottom line.
We saw that on display on Monday night. There's no doubt about it. Rudy, congrats on all the success, man. We're excited to have you on this side of the aisle here now. Enjoy next week. I know the Vikings are going to honor you before that Week 3 game against the Chargers, so we're all looking forward to watching that and listening to you on Sunday nights and on college football games going forward, man. Should be a ton of fun.
Thanks, guys. Always great to chat.
Thanks, man.
Awesome stuff. Yeah, he's
Another one on
natural.
our side. Another one on our side.
And more importantly, Dad, another Notre Dame guy in the business right now. I'm sick and tired of all these Northwestern and Missouri and Syracuse folks out here.
Right.
We got to bring another one into the fold. We got another one in the fold, and it all feels good here. We're going to finish it off coming up next with shocking revelations about life out in the great beyond. Next on GoJo Golic. All right, time to finish off the show the way we always do. This, that, and the third. 3 quick stories. Send you off into your day. As always, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review. Leave us that 5-star rating and check us out on DraftKings YouTube, DraftKingsNetwork.com, and Samsung TV Plus, 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern, live Monday through Friday. And always thank you to our guests. Thank you to Kyle Rudolph, who stopped by here. All the great things he's got going on. Dad, let's start with this. Right in our wheelhouse. A competitive eater went and took on a very interesting challenge this last week. On Tuesday, the Eagles posted a video where the competitive eater, Dan Killer Kennedy, went through and ate an entire offensive lineman's daily diet in about 5 minutes. The videos with Lane Johnson and Cam Jurgens from the Philadelphia Eagles offensive line, where they laid out all of the things that Lane Johnson typically eats in a day. The list is as follows: 2 12-ounce ribeyes, 5 scrambled eggs, 1 avocado, 3 sausage links, 3 Greek yogurts, 1 sweet potato, 1 baked potato, 2 protein shakes, 2 orange juices, and 1 monster mash, which is rice, ground beef, and some seasoning in a bowl. It's between 5,000 and 6,000 calories for a day, which, Dad, as someone who used to have to eat 5,000 to 6,000 calories a day to try and keep the weight on, can totally understand. If you have not seen this video, watching what this man did in front of, and this was not a big guy. Dan Kennedy is, like a lot of competitive eaters now, smaller in stature, slighter in frame, just wolfed this food down in a way that you could tell even made the linemen uncomfortable, and that's hard to do.
It's stunning. We both had interactions. Hell, you've called the Nathan's hot dog eating contest. We've had them at our set at ESPN. We've eaten against them. When you see it up close and personal of what they do, it is stunning. So to see all this food that Lane Johnson eats in a day, and by the way, man, that's a hell of a lot of food Lane Johnson eats in a day. To have this guy just sit there as Lane watches him house this in 5 minutes is truly stunning. Because normally years ago, you think of these competitive eaters are these big fat guys, and it's not. It's always more well-built guys or smaller guys that do it. So it's an incredible feat. I know a lot of people are grossed out by it. I'm amazed by it. To sit there and watch him devour that is just, and it just makes you crazy. It's unreal.
I likened it. So I once was in an exhibition with Joey Chestnut and another eater before the national title game in 2019. And we were down in Louisiana on a boat, and we were eating beignets, and we had 4 minutes to do it. It wasn't a contest. It was just an exhibition. So they were just doing this for funsies. In 4 minutes, I ate 14 beignets that were about the size of my fist, and I felt pretty good about that. Joey Chestnut was next to me, the world's foremost competitive eater. He ate 74 of them in 4 minutes. Yeah. It is the single most impressive athletic feat I've ever seen in person. I liken it to, it was like if you stand on the side of the highway when cars are whizzing by. I felt legitimate fear. I thought he was going to reach onto my plate and take my food because he was getting bored with his. So that is what those two guys were witnessing in person right there. And it was a lot. And it also made me hungry, which kind of is a weird, sick.
I'm hungry now. Yeah, I could go for a ribeye.
Those ribeyes look good.
Real
that
good.
was really. That's what set it off there.
Killing them.
So congratulations to him for emasculating those big, large, burly boys right in their dojo. Jesse, let's go to that, to one of the more compelling stories from yesterday's news surrounding UFOs.
So Mexican officials were shown 2 mummified corpses, okay, that a UFO expert claims are a clear demonstration of non-human aliens. The internet, on the other hand, does not feel the same way. And everyone's going crazy saying, oh, well, did they see E.T. because these aliens look exactly like E.T. Steven Spielberg must have been around 1,000 years ago when these aliens were around because he modeled E.T. exactly after them, blah, blah, blah. Pretty interesting. Obviously, we talked about this a little earlier. We know we're not alone in this universe, but I highly doubt that these are the corpses of the aliens.
Yeah, no, I think this one ended up, it started with such promise because we've seen so many of like the U.S. hearings about UFOs and former military members claiming that they've seen them and all these stuff. So it felt like we were building on something. But Dad, then we come to find out apparently this video got debunked in like 2021. It's a retread video here. It did look like a paper mache alien. Like I will say, I don't imagine they're going to look like we've just drawn up in movies. That's probably a little nonsensical. But this one especially seemed like a project I would have done in middle school. So we should have known something was up.
You could easily see this one mouthing E.T. phone home. I mean, it was a shame because, as Jesse said, anybody who thinks we're alone, I can't even believe you would even think that in this vast universe of ours that we're the only living organisms out there. Let me ask you both a question. If an alien came down and said, we want to take you back to our world, you'll be with us for a while, but when you come back, it'll be like no time has passed. Because I wouldn't want to do it if all of a sudden I'm away from your mother and you, my kids and my grandkids. I wouldn't want to do that and miss that. But if they said, come with us, you're going to our world for X amount of time, and when you come back to Earth, it'll be like no time has passed. Would you go?
No, that
So the
sounds
movie
like
Contact.
what someone says to get you into the white van. We'll bring you right back. It's totally fine.
Hey, the aliens want me to come help find their dog. Is that okay?
Yeah.
We got puppies in the spaceship, and it will be like no time has passed. I'd be like, okay, let me just go get my. I'm gone.
Yeah.
See how fast
Mike,
they're
would you
doing.
go? Would you go, Mike?
Yeah, I'd probably go. I mean, again, this is the plot of the movie Contact, where I think it's Sigourney Weaver in that movie is gone for like an instant, but gets to travel and see all this and learn all about these aliens.
Right.
Hell yeah, that'd be cool as hell. I'm never someone. I don't want to go to space in a rocket ship. I don't trust our technology yet. But if those guys get here, that means they're not new to this. They're true to this. And they're about that space travel life. So I'd probably be cool with that. No time passes. I get to learn some new stuff. Maybe I'll find out. I saw someone yesterday point out the fact that we spend millions and billions on military development every year, but we haven't developed a single Halo weapon yet. Maybe I can find a needler. Maybe there's a beam sword out there. Maybe there's something I can get back to advance the conversation. Who knows? It would be very exciting. Would you do it, Dad?
Oh, yeah, I think I would do it. Yeah, I would. Until I got on their ship and all of a sudden I was restrained, I'd be like, uh-oh, this is a bad decision. I don't know. Mistakes have been made. I don't know what they're going to do to me now. Yeah, I think I would, knowing I could come back at the same time. Obviously, you don't know what's going to go on up there, but I think I would take the shot, and give it a go.
This is the difference between men and women. You guys are very trusting, whereas women, we grew up, you don't trust someone trying to get you in their spaceship or their car.
In their spaceship, because that occurs a lot, right, Jesse? That happened a lot when you
never
were a
get
kid.
in spaceships with strangers.
Oh, Jodie Foster in Contact, by the way.
Yeah,
Shame on me for making that mistake. Let's get to another work of cinematic excellence, Jesse, in the third, and what we got to look coming up is an NFL crossover.
Yeah, this is cool. Okay, so the October 1 game between the Jags and Falcons is going to be Toy Story Fun Day football. So kicking off on Disney Plus, ESPN Plus at 9:30 a.m. because the game is being played in London. So using NFL's next-gen stats and on-field tracking data, every player and play is going to be presented in Andy's room from the Toy Story franchise. So there's going to be like a 30-second delay, they're saying, but it's essentially we're going to be watching an animated version of the game.
I love this, Dad. I know we're fresh off the Nickelodeon broadcast, too. And this is just proof that now my generation as parents are really the target market for this. Because if you want to make a bunch of millennials cry and get in their feelings, show them Toy Story stuff.
Absolutely.
You are not kidding. I am so for this. So, I mean, I love the Toy Story series. And this, I love the Nickelodeon. I love the way they go about that. I think Nate Burleson has done a great job with that, but I love the whole concept. And I am looking forward to seeing, because we know, animation is so cool nowadays and what they can do. I am so looking forward to this. I think it'll be the neatest thing in the world. And you're right, targeting an audience who loves Toy Story, that's a great way to go, because that was about as popular a show as there was out there.
Say, raise your hand if you're in your mid-30s and cried during Toy Story 3 when you saw it in college.
Mid-30s? Come on.
Yeah, I can say everyone.
It's a great opportunity to do it, obviously, because the game's going to be early in the morning when kids are going crazy, and it's 9:30 and you've been up for hours.
Oh, right.
And listen, I would be remiss if I didn't say they're also selling a great product. Our friend Emerson Lazia would say, by putting America's team, the Jacksonville Jaguars, into this particular venue, it is a beautiful thing. We think you're beautiful. If you agree, download, subscribe, rate, review. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you tomorrow.